Hi, I'm Shar Jorgenson and welcome to Inspired by Shar. After a recent visit to Jackson Hole, Wyoming and seeing the Tetons, I decided I wanted to name the quilt today after them and call it the Tetons. When you look at the quilt behind me, you'll see that I have used all kinds of scraps in that quilt. It's using the diamonds and triangles of different sizes from the Pandora's box. When looking at the quilt, you'll see that I've separated my fabrics by lights, mediums, and darks. You'll also see that there's a lot of different textures throughout the whole quilt. And in some of the blocks, I've thrown in a little stripe and taken advantage of the stripe where I've used it in three different directions in this block. And in this block I've done the same. See how I've put the stripe so it all kind of goes to the same towards the center. And that happens in the piecing process, so it's not any special cutting that I've done, it's just how I place them in the quilt. When choosing your fabrics for a scrap quilt like this, I decide how far I want my color range to go. And when you look at the stacks of fabrics that I've been working from over here, you will see that I have quite a variety of them, and underneath each of these stacks you'll see even more colors. So when I do start playing with my scraps, I lay them all out on the table in front of me. And then I decide how far do I really want the range of color to go. And I do the same thing with my lights, my mediums, and my darks. So after I have separated them into the three different groups, then I play with them even more. And even if I've cut the fabrics, I still don't always use them. After I have made all of the blocks for this quilt, then I choose the fabric that sets all of the blocks up, separates them very nicely. I want the right texture in the background and something that complements all of the colors that I have used in that quilt. Before I decide on my borders for the quilt, I audition many different fabrics and hold them up to the finished pieces before I decide which ones I want to put on the outside edge. And in this case, the darker blue was a nice ending to this quilt. And the next quilt that I'm showing you is one which I named Northern Lights. And in this quilt, it is similar in that I used 4 different sizes of triangles from Pandora's box, but I just haven't added any diamonds to this one. As you look at it, you'll see that I've used a lot of batiks, and that's what added all the color and gave me the idea to call it Northern Lights. The next quilt that we're going to is done with plaids and stripes, also using a lot of scraps. And this one I call Big Sky. And this one I have used the diamonds in the larger size from Pandora's box, and then towards the bottom I've used the smaller triangles and then a nice dark background to go between each of those pyramids of diamonds. Today we're going to focus on the Tetons. Before I start cutting, I'm going to show you the tools that I will be working with today. And it is a set of templates which we have named Pandora's Box. Pandora's box is many different shapes. Actually, there are 15 templates that come in the set. There are squares, half squares, quarter squares, diamonds, triangles, and hexagons. They make a 12-inch finished square, and it starts out with 2 squares, a small and a large, and they are all drafted so that 4 of the small equal the large one when you're working with the squares. You have half square triangles and quarter square triangles for both the small and the large. So actually you can do miniature quilts if you like to do that from Pandora's box. Then with the triangles, there are 3 that come in the set, and they are also drafted so that 4 of the small one equal the next one, 4 of those equal the next size triangle. Then I also have an add-on to Pandora's box, which I have named the P template, and that can be purchased separately, and that also can be used very nicely with Pandora's box. As you see, 4 of those equal that one. There are also diamonds in the set. When I was showing you the Big Sky quilt, this is what I did with that one. I used the diamond and one of the smaller triangles when working with that set. So you see you have lots and lots of different options with this set of templates. I'm just showing you a small amount of things that you can do today with this set. Now the next thing we're going to do is put the fabric grips on the templates. As you see, I've already done that. They have little felt dots on each of the circles, and they come in a package of 56. And there's 2 sizes in there, and you want to do that on every single template that you have, and that will keep them from slipping when we're cutting our fabric. The first thing I'm going to cut is the triangles that sit in this part of the block. The whole block, this is a block in progress, first of all, and then this is one that's sewn a little bit farther along. And when it's completed, during the sewing, I will sew this seam. So I'm going to first cut these shapes. Ahead of time, I had pre-cut some strips for that shape. And this is the template that sits right in here. That is template N. I do believe I have about 6 layers of fabric. And I had already used fabric from this strip, so I have a nice edge here to follow. Then I'll take the next one here, and I need to trim off just a little bit there. If your strips aren't cut exactly the right width, then trim off the excess when you're cutting the strips. Notice now how I'm going to get 6 each time, so I will have enough for 6 of these blocks with that same shape. So here would be some of my triangles. What a wonderful way to cut for your quilt, and see how fast it's going to work out. And when I'm doing my cutting, I'm also designing on a large design wall at the same time, so I'm able to see how my design is progressing. And just because I have enough fabric for one more, I'm not going to throw that. I'm going to cut this one right here. And if I were doing a scrap quilt in a smaller version, I'd probably even save these little triangles for another project. You can't throw that little piece of fabric away. The pieces that I just finished cutting will fit into this part of the block. So I actually have already this part cut for 6 more of these blocks. The next piece I'm going to cut now are the little diamonds that go in this part of the block, and each block has 6 of those diamonds. Now that we're ready to cut our diamonds, ahead of time I had layered my strips on top of each other, and we'll slide it over so we take advantage of that nice little cut there. And I need 6 of these for each block. And remember, I always go backwards first and then forward. I got just enough fabric to get number 6 out. Backwards and forward. So we now have 6 diamonds, enough to do another block. Next, I'm going to cut the triangles that we use for the background of each of these diamonds. And ahead of time, I have all of my fabric stacked up real nice. As you can see, there's 6 in each of these piles. So I need to cut a strip from one of those stacks. I have already straightened this edge, so I'm ready to cut the strip that I need. And I think it's a 2-inch strip that I need, but I'm going to double check and make sure. Yep, it's a 2-inch strip that I need. And we're going to do all 6 of those fabrics at the same time because we want to save as much time as we can. As I cut through the fabrics, I walked my hand on the ruler as I was cutting. And we now are ready to cut our little triangles. And for each block, I need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I need 12 of those for each block. Again, go backwards and then forwards. And a reminder, the reason I do that is because if I start up and down here, I might hit the corner of the template and then dull my blade. So you don't want to do that. Cut off that part. So there we have 6 different combinations of triangles. The next one will just follow over here and keep going until you have all 12 of them. So we have 6 blocks of these ready to go, and then after that comes the fun part where you can start arranging them on the design wall and creating your own version of the Tetons. When I started this project, I went into my stash of fabric, and I know a lot of you do like I do and collect collections of fat quarters. And that's what I started with was just fat quarters of fabric. Perfect quilt to use those up in. What do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Am I going to get it from this? I might have to cut another strip. I won't actually take your time to do that, but I am going to go to the end of this because they're arranged so perfectly. Notice how I have no wasted fabric. Now, if your scraps are smaller than fat quarters, you can still do this just by cutting from a scrap piece of fabric. These are a bigger version of the block. This is the bigger size of the Tetons. And when I was playing with this pattern, I realized that if I took just part of the block, which would be the top half of the block, I could have a smaller version of that same quilt. And when you look over here to the design wall, then you'll see that I have that one in progress. And this one is from the scraps left over from the ends of cuttings, and that's how this one was born. So to do, for instance, the background triangles for this particular one, I want to talk a little bit about how these triangles are cut and how you get the beginning and the end of that row cut. I'll straighten up and remove the salvage over here, and then I moved the template 1/4 inch from the end of the strip. You'll see that when I've cut this, I have 1/4 inch from the edge of the straightened edge. That is so I have the 1/4 inch built in, so when I sew this seam, it'll come out perfectly before I put that first border on when I'm finishing off the quilt. Otherwise, you'll just cut this triangle and go just like I did the little ones. And that's how these are all cut for that part of the quilt. Now it's going to be fun showing you how to sew it together.